Hello AS, welcome to your second homework where you'll be marking your answers. So this is the one for different variables. What I would like you to do is make sure you've answered the questions first, get a different coloured pen, give yourselves a mark for each question. Every question you don't get full marks for, I'd like you to make a note of why you didn't, and then I'd like you to look for any patterns so that you can improve for next time. So there's certain things that you did or didn't always do that stopped you getting the marks. Suggest one possible extraneous variable in the study. You have loads of different extraneous variables that you could talk about. What you must do is you must specifically name them. So you can't just say participant variables. You'd need to say participant variables such as memory. So people having different memories, people being different ages might be one, possibly. It's a bit weak. Environmental variables such as temperature or noise, the type of supermarket that it's in, all those different things, and experimental variables, so the way that the research was conducted in itself. Think of all those different extraneous variables that we talked about particularly. Just make sure you are specific. And the only thing you wouldn't get marks for is saying that it's organised into categories or not organised into categories, because that is the IV, and we want the IV to affect the DV. We don't want any extraneous variables to affect the DV. Okay, so remember that little clip off the board where you have the image off the board with the IV and an arrow to DV, and then all the extraneous variables hitting the DV. That's what I want you to think about. It's just one way in which students could control this extraneous variable. It must be linked to part C. So read your question before. But obviously I've deleted some questions that weren't needed. So go back to the question before and have a look at that. Is your control you've suggested related to the control extraneous variable? If it isn't, then no mark. So if you said, for example, memory, and then you started talking about everyone would have the same amount of time, or all the words would be the same for both conditions, then you don't get any marks. They must be linked together. 1 mark for a brief suggestion, and the second mark for explaining how. So suggesting an idea, so what are you going to do, and then tell me how you're going to do it. So the example here would be to control for a difference in memory. So my extraneous variable that I picked up was a problem with memory, and the fact that everybody has different memories. So just because one person remembers something and another person doesn't, it doesn't mean that was because of the categorization of the organisation of the categories or not. It could have been that one of them just had a better memory than the other, and the way that I control for that is by ensuring that participants are matched, and that's what I'm saying. So that's my brief suggestion, and then telling you how I am going to do that by giving them a test beforehand and matching them with someone of the same memory. So get them to do a memory test. You remembered 5, you remembered 5, excellent, we'll match you together. One of you will be categorised, one of you will be uncategorised words. Off you go. Okay, so that's one. What is meant by the term investigator effect? Explain possible investigator effects in the study. So you get 2 marks for explaining investigator effect, that should say. 2 marks for contextualising. This is linking it back to the study. So this is a 2-pronged question. This is really important. We're not going to look at this properly until the next session with me, but I want it in your minds for now. I want you thinking about it. So please do not feel bad if you didn't get the marks. You can feel nice and pleased if you did, but if you don't get the marks for this one, we haven't looked at it yet. So it is not the contextualisation part. You should all know about investigator effect. Okay, so investigator effect, let's have a look for 2 marks. Occurs when the researcher's behaviour or characteristics influence the way the research influence the research in some way, and then you could give a bit more detail for that second mark. This includes the fact that the presence of the experimenter might affect the participants' behaviour. In this study, the psychologist may expect the cognitive interview to be more effective than the standard interview. So now what we've gone on to, these 2, if that's all you've done, you get 2 marks. Now this phrase, in this study, is extremely important. That's saying to me, you must use information from the study itself. If you don't, you won't get any more marks. So go through back at the stimulus, and then look at your exam answers. Are there any words from the stimulus, from the example in your exam? Are there any? Have you used any in your answer? So for me, I would read through it and I'd say the words cognitive interview and standard interview and think, yes, I've contextualised. I can get 3 marks for that. So you must make sure to get beyond 2 marks. You've linked it back to the study in your exam. In the study, the psychologist may expect the cognitive interview to be more effective than the standard interview. Then tell me why that's a problem. This may be unconsciously communicated to the participants through mannerisms such as smiling or frowning. And that would be all you need to do. Okay? Psychologists allocated the participants randomly, explain how they could have done it to the two groups. There are several different ways that you could do this. The key thing, you must make it really clear, is how the actual allocation happens. So I've had tons of students who've said each participant in the sample could be given a number which is put into a hat. So participant 1 is given number 1, participant 2, number 2, participant 3, number 3, and so on. So you just get them in a list and number them. Then you say the first 50 drawn out of the hat would be allocated to one of the groups. That would be 2 marks. You've said you'll number them, and then the first 50 numbers drawn out of the hat would be allocated to one group. If what you have done is said you would number all of the sample, and then you would draw 50 numbers out of the hat, and that's it. All you've said is you'd number some people and then you draw numbers out of the hat. It's completely pointless unless you say those first 50 numbers would be allocated to one group. The other way you can do it, which is the way that we've done it in session, is you'd have 50 A's and 50 B's in the hat, and you must say that it would be an equal number of A's and it would be an equal number of B's, and you would let the participants draw the letters out. If that's all you said, still no marks, because what does that do? That's just a pointless exercise. You're putting numbers in a hat and then you're giving numbers to people. So you must say that the letters indicate, designate, whatever, the group. So 50 A's and 50 B's in a hat, participants would draw them out. If they got an A, they would be in this group, and if they got a B, they would be in this group. You can credit alternative methods, but it must be made clear you would allocate them to groups. So make sure they've taken it the whole way. They've not just half explained it. Make sure they say, and these people will go in this group, and these people will go in that group. Briefly explain one reason why random allocation of participants is important. 1 mark for an appropriate reason and a 1 mark for an explanation of that reason. So one of the reasons could be that it reduces the effect of participant variables, which is an extraneous variable. So that would be your appropriate reason. We use random allocation to reduce, not remove, reduce the effect of participant variables. We can never remove them altogether, but we can reduce them, we can control them. Please never ever say remove completely, just say reduce or control. Therefore, we can be more confident of cause and effect, which would increase the validity. The same with random allocation and reducing experimenter effect, which is another example of extraneous variable. So we can be more confident of cause and effect, increasing the internal validity. We're removing those EVs pointing at that DV, so the only thing left, or not the only thing, but as much as we can, one of the few variables is the IV with an arrow to the DV, and that is it, nothing else. Okay. That's the end. Make sure that you have marked every single one. Anywhere that you haven't got full marks, please can you make a note of why you haven't got full marks, ready for your next assessment with me.